Well, I'm joined today by Tania and Adam from Jits Into The Sunset. How you doing?
Hello, we're good.
Thank you for having us. This is so exciting.
It's super exciting for me because I've been watching your video films for so long now. And I can legit talk to you now about podcasting because you're legit podcasters now. So,
Wow.
and I mean, what's amazing is, before we even get into it, do you want to just sort of give listeners and viewers of this a little background into who you are as well, because we're not recording this in your standard location. You know, where you're recording this is pivotal to your story. So give us a little kind of brief introduction as to your stories.
So, yeah, we live in our camper van full time, and we have done for about 3.5 years. I'm Adam. I was a filmmaker, freelancer for 10 years before kind of like deciding to stop that to live in the van and to pursue YouTube with Tanya. We as soon as we got together, the first thing that we spoke about, or one of the very first things that we spoke about on our first date, was our love for travel and our passion for van life. And I already had my van because it's my mum's van. I inherited it. And
I wanted to live in a van. So finding a man with a van on the first date, I was like, done. Signed, sealed, delivered. This is the man for me. But yeah, sharing just that passion for travel, and also something that feels like maybe it's a bit more popular now. But, you know, back then it was pre-pandemic. Not everyone was jumping on the van bandwagon, if you will. And yeah, we just wanted to travel and see the world differently, quit our jobs. And so we just saved up our money any way that we could, and then we took off on a van trip and making films, sharing them on YouTube, building a community that wanted to travel alongside us virtually. And we haven't really looked back. We were intending to travel for a year, and now it's 3.5 years later and we're still going, and we feel really, really privileged and very, very fortunate.
yeah, we started as YouTubers, and now, like you said, we've spread our wings and gone over to podcasting, which we're really, really enjoying.
Yeah, it's our passion project.
Love it. Well, tell us all about the podcast.
Well, the podcast, we started it just over 6 months ago. And if we're really honest, it was something that we wanted to do for the longest time, over 2 years ago. And I think, like with all people, you think about like doing it, but the fear consumes you and maybe the judgment of other people. And it is a completely new territory for us. So we actually recorded our first episode a year and a half before we actually launched it. And we sat on it and we thought, we were berating ourselves, it's not good enough. And it wasn't until a year and a half later that we said, you know what, let's try and give the podcasting another go, and let's listen to that first episode again and see how we can improve. And you know what, we were just driving along in Jits, our camper van, listening to it, and we just thought, you know what, this is good enough. This is the first episode, sharing our story. It's us being us. Let's just put it out there and see what happens. And we were so pleasantly surprised, because that episode, our community were just incredibly supportive, and we made it to one of the top 5 on the UK charts for travel and culture. So we were delighted.
I mean, because I've been watching your YouTube channel for so long, and obviously the I should say as well, and I'll shout out the YouTube channel, because there's a hell of a lot of incredible travel vlogs and stuff, but I do want to really shout out the filmmaking skills of what you do, because it looks phenomenal. It really does. And
Thank you.
and also, with that in mind, having such a visual element of travel is so key. Like, how did you work out how you was going to do that with just audio?
Well, I guess that the podcast is more about the story of the people behind the travel and why they're doing it and the motivation. So the podcast itself isn't so much, oh, this is Italy, here we are in Italy, we love Italy. Although there's a bit of that with our diary updates, but the meat and bones, I guess, of the podcast is interviews with other people, and other people who have decided to take an alternative lifestyle. So we kind of follow people who've done full-time travel, van life, boat life, anything kind of
Adventurous.
this adventurous and a different kind of trajectory. Because like there's nothing wrong with the 9 to 5, of course, and that is great for so many people, and there's lots of appeals to it, the stability and all of that. But there's also another alternative, and we want to speak to the people that have taken that other alternative. So there is stories from the road, it's stories from their adventures, but it's also about why they did it, like the struggles of doing it. Because a lot of, you can watch YouTube, you can look at Instagram, and it can seem very just fun, and you can just see the glamorous side of it. But being a full-time YouTuber, that comes with its own challenges. Traveling full-time in a van comes with its own challenges. The people that we've spoken to travel in a boat, live on a narrow boat as well, and we've had all sorts of guests, and they live just really interesting lives, and they've got a lot of lessons and a lot to give, and we figured that there's not a space for that. And it just wasn't something that needed to be visual. I thought the amazing thing about podcasting is it's a lot more intimate than YouTube in a way. It's kind of like you can listen to an hour of people chatting and be part of a conversation whilst you're doing something else. And films, if you're going to sit down and watch YouTube, you have to purposefully be doing that. Whereas the things we love about podcasts is that you can take them anywhere with you. You can listen to them when you're on a long drive, and we live in a van, so we do lots of long driving. So we've been big fans of podcasts, and I think that's just what we've always loved podcasts. So to be able to have one of our own now and be in people's ears, and it's just amazing.
And the conversations, just to really delve into people's stories, and people really open up and they show their vulnerabilities in a way that they don't do in any other medium. So when we're interviewing these guests, even their own communities that know them and follow them will learn things about them that they won't have heard anywhere else, because we're talking about issues like grief or mental health, or the kind of the drive and the motivation, their mantras, all of these things that as the listener, when you're tuning in, and we see it in the messages and the quality of the conversation that we have offline with our podcast community, that it is really, it's really flicking a switch inside of somebody. And we've had people let us know that they've taken action in their own life off the back of a conversation that we've had with someone. And that in and of itself is so incredibly rewarding. And that's why we continue to do it.
Well, I'll let you into a secret, right? I turned 50 in April, and I'm getting my first van totally inspired by watching yous.
No, that is amazing. That's exciting as well. Do you have any big trips planned?
Do you know what? Ireland first. When I watched your videos of Ireland, I thought that's where I'm going to start. It looks beautiful. I'm a big wild swimmer anyway, so I like to go and explore and swim in kind of like crazy places. But I've never done Ireland, and after watching your road trip, I thought that's where I'm starting. But one of the things you've mentioned community a lot on YouTube, and there's very much through Pop Bible and through being a podcaster myself in other podcasts, community is key. And one of the episodes that I really enjoyed of your podcast was when you talk about, and you're very transparent about it as well, the financial implications of being a creative, and I think that really applies to being a podcaster as well. And so tell me a little bit about, I know it's not directly in place to finance the podcast, but the benefits, because so many podcasters utilize Patreon. So tell me about community and Patreon and how that's affected yous.
Well, we've had Patreon for the last year, and that's been mostly made up of our YouTube community. But with the podcast, because right now the only way that we get any financial support is through our Patreons, we've been able to say to our community, if you're enjoying listening, head over and support us there. And so we have definitely seen a trickle of people. By no means are we millionaires off the back of it. This is why we very much say it's a passion project for us. And it's something that we want to do for we see ourselves doing this for decades, because there's just a love for podcasting.
There's so many people to have the conversation with.
It's endless, exactly. And so Patreon is definitely one of the ways that we're getting support from our community. And I think in the future, as our podcast continue to grow, we will be looking for brand sponsors that really align with our values and that we feel will also be interesting and beneficial to our listeners, so that income can help with the production of our podcast, which at the moment it's pretty much self-funded.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Now, I know this is like asking somebody who their favorite child is, but if you had to pinpoint an episode of the podcast so far Would you say, or for new listeners, would you say go to the very beginning and start there and follow the journey? Or would you say, do you know what, if you're going to give us a try and there's one episode where you really feel like it captures what you wanted to set out to do with a podcast, where would you send guests?
So I'd say, yeah, if you want to know more about us and why we're doing the podcast and how we began, then episode 1, start from the beginning. That's kind of us. And then we talk about our learnings from our travels for the first few episodes. And then I think episode 4 is our first interview. And then from there it's interviews. So yeah, by all means, we'd love people to go right to the start and listen to them all. But if I could point people to one, it would be, and I can't remember what number episode it is, but it's with Siobhan. Let me have a look quickly.
Siobhan Daniels.
Siobhan Daniels.
And she's known as the retirement rebel. So she is in her 60s, worked in the BBC and high stress, high pressure environment. And she set off to leave that industry and go and travel, and also now travel in her camper van. And her story is incredibly inspirational because she's a wonderful speaker, she's a wonderful storyteller, and she's incredibly motivational. One of the red threads that runs throughout our podcast is really the essence that it is never too late in any stage of your life to pivot your life's trajectory. And Siobhan is proof of that, because it's, it was in her later years that she decided that she wanted to pursue a different life and essentially follow her dreams in that way.
She's really inspirational,
Yeah.
and she had a tough start to life, and she's had a bit of a roller coaster of a life, and now in her retirement, and it kind of echoes the story of my mum. In her retirement, she's really taken hold of her life and done what she's loved. It's episode number 21, I've just found.
Wonderful.
And that's one of our, we've had a lot of great conversations, so it is hard to pick one, but that's one that's always stuck in my mind because she's such a great speaker and really inspirational person.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. And the podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely. And if people want to check out the YouTube videos, where do they need to go for that?
Jits Into the Sunset. If you Google Jits Into the Sunset, you will find us on YouTube, on Instagram, on all the podcasts, everywhere. So that is us.
But the podcast is called Travel, Adventure and Road Trips by Jits Into the Sunset.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Well, if it's all right with you, we'll tag you in all of the social media posts when this comes out, so people, if they've not found you already, can go and find you.
Please
Amazing.
do. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to press stop. Don't go anywhere.